June 17, 1944, Saipan, Mariana Islands. 44 tanks of the Imperial Japanese Army, S-9th Tank Regiment, launched a nighttime assault against United States Marine Corps positions. Within 4 hours, 31 of these armored vehicles would be destroyed, many penetrated by 50 caliber machine gun fire. This engagement marked a turning point in Pacific armor warfare, revealing fundamental flaws in Japanese tank design philosophy that had persisted for over a decade. The origins of this tactical failure trace back to 1933, when the Imperial Japanese Army General Staff identified a critical deficiency in their mechanized capabilities. The Type 89 Igo medium tank, entering service in 1929, represented Japan's first domestically produced armored vehicle. Powered by a Mitsubishi A6120VD E6-cylinder gasoline engine generating 120 horsepower, the Type 89 achieved a maximum road speed of only 25 kilometers per hour. Combat reports from Manchuria indicated this velocity proved insufficient for exploitation operations following infantry breakthroughs. Japanese military planners examined contemporary European developments, particularly British experiments with light tank formations and Soviet mechanization programs. The British Carden-Loyd tankette influenced Japanese thinking significantly. Military attaches in London reported on British Army trials emphasizing mobility and mechanical reliability over heavy armor protection. This intelligence shaped Japanese requirements for a new light tank class. If you appreciate detailed, evidence-based World War II history with precise technical specifications and documented combat analysis, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment indicating your location. We feature viewer comments in future content. In August 1933, the Army Technical Bureau issued specifications to Mitsubishi Heavy Industries for a light tank weighing approximately 7 metric tons with a road speed exceeding 40 kilometers per hour. Lead engineer Tomio Hara headed the design team. Hara had previously worked on the Type 89's suspension system and understood the limitations of Japan's industrial capacity for armor plate production. The design philosophy prioritized several factors. First, compatibility with Japanese infrastructure. The tank needed to traverse narrow roads and wooden bridges throughout Asia. Second, mechanical simplicity to facilitate maintenance by conscript crews with limited technical training. Third, operational range suitable for extended campaigns with unreliable supply lines. Fourth, sufficient armament to defeat Chinese fortifications and infantry formations. Hara's team developed a bell crank suspension system utilizing 6 road wheels per side. This arrangement provided superior weight distribution compared to contemporary designs. The suspension allowed for 20 centimeters of vertical travel, enabling cross-country mobility across varied terrain. Declassified Mitsubishi engineering documents indicate the suspension system underwent extensive testing at the Sagamihara Proving Grounds near Tokyo. For power plant selection, Hara chose the Mitsubishi NVD 6120 air-cooled diesel engine. This 6-cylinder unit generated 120 horsepower at 1,800 revolutions per minute. The air cooling system eliminated the complexity and vulnerability of liquid cooling arrangements. Diesel fuel offered advantages over gasoline, higher energy density providing greater operational range, reduced fire risk following armor penetration, and compatibility with Navy fuel supplies for amphibious operations. The transmission featured 4 forward gears and 1 reverse, connected to a controlled differential steering system. This arrangement allowed the vehicle to pivot within its own length, a capability that proved valuable in confined jungle environments. Maximum road speed reached 45 kilometers per hour, with cross-country speed of approximately 30 kilometers per hour, depending on terrain conditions. Armament consisted of a Type 94 37mm tank gun, mounted in a small turret with limited traverse. This weapon fired armor-piercing projectiles at 575 meters per second muzzle velocity. Maximum penetration reached 45 millimeters of homogeneous steel at 100 meters range. Secondary armament included two Type 97 7.7 millimeters machine guns, one coaxial with the main gun, one hull mounted to the right of the driver position. The critical design compromise involved armor protection. Maximum thickness measured 12 millimeters on the turret front and hull glacis, with 10 millimeters on side and rear plates. Armor was specified as rolled homogeneous steel manufactured at the Iwata Steel Works. Engineering calculations indicated this protection would defeat 7.7 millimeters rifle caliber rounds and shell fragments at ranges beyond 200 meters. The design philosophy accepted vulnerability to dedicated anti-tank weapons as an acceptable trade-off for reduced weight and increased mobility. The prototype completed trials in 1934. Army evaluators designated it the Type 95 light tank, referencing the Japanese imperial calendar year 2595. The vehicle measured 4.3 meters in length, 2.07 meters in width, and 2.18 meters in height. Combat weight totaled 7.4 metric tons. Crew consisted of 3 personnel: driver, hull machine gunner, and commander, who also served as gunner and loader. Production authorization came in 1936. Mitsubishi received contracts for initial production runs, with additional manufacturing assigned to Nagata Engineering Company and Kobe Steel Works. Total production from 1936 to 1943 reached approximately 2,300 units, comprising the majority of Japanese light tank production during the period. The Type 95 Hago's internal arrangement reflected Japanese design priorities and manufacturing limitations. The driver occupied the front left position, operating steering levers, throttle, and clutch pedal. Vision devices consisted of a simple armored glass visor with a sliding steel cover. No periscopic sights were fitted. The driver's compartment measured approximately 80 centimeters in width, severely restricting movement. The hull machine gunner sat to the driver's right, operating the Type 97 7.7 millimeters weapon through a ball mount with approximately 45 degrees of traverse. Ammunition storage consisted of metal drums holding 97 rounds each. The gunner also served as radio operator when the vehicle carried wireless equipment, though only platoon and company command tanks received radios in standard configuration. The turret housed both the commander and the main armament. The Type 94 37 millimeters gun occupied the turret front, with the commander positioned to its left. This arrangement created severe ergonomic challenges. The commander performed target acquisition, gun laying, ammunition loading, firing, and tactical command simultaneously. No dedicated loader position existed. The commander selected rounds from ready racks holding 20 projectiles, manually loaded each shot, aimed using a simple telescopic sight with 2.5x magnification, and fired using a mechanical trigger. The Type 94 gun fired several ammunition types. The Type 94 armor-piercing shot weighed 0.7 kilograms and featured a simple pointed nose with no ballistic cap. High-explosive shells weighed 0.64 kilograms and contained 35 grams of explosive filler. Canister rounds for anti-personnel use were also available. Muzzle velocity of armor-piercing rounds reached 575 meters per second. Maximum effective range against moving targets was approximately 700 meters, though Japanese tank doctrine emphasized engagements at 300 to 400 meters. The turret ring diameter measured only 1.1 meters, among the smallest of any World War II tank. Manual traverse required approximately 40 full rotations of a hand crank to complete 360 degrees of movement. No power traverse mechanism existed. The commander could achieve rapid small adjustments by pushing against the turret interior with his shoulders while maintaining sight picture, a technique taught during training but physically demanding during extended combat. Armor protection specifications revealed the fundamental vulnerability that would manifest on Saipan. The turret front measured 12 mm at 80 degrees from vertical. The hull glacis measured 12 mm at 15 degrees slope. Side armor measured 12 mm vertical. Rear plates measured 10 mm. Top armor measured 6 mm. Floor armor measured 6 mm. No spaced armor, applique plates, or sloped surfaces were incorporated beyond the shallow glacis angle. Metallurgical testing of captured Type 95 hulls conducted by Aberdeen Proving Ground in 1945 indicated armor quality varied significantly between production batches. Fuel capacity totaled 110 liters in 2 internal tanks. Operational range on roads reached approximately 250 kilometers. Cross-country range decreased to 150 to 180 kilometers depending on terrain. The air-cooled diesel engine proved mechanically reliable under tropical conditions, but generated considerable noise, a significant tactical liability during approach movements. The Type 95's cross-country mobility represented its primary advantage. Ground pressure of approximately 0.68 kilograms per square centimeter allowed operation across soft terrain that would bog heavier vehicles. The suspension system absorbed impacts effectively, maintaining gun stability during movement. Japanese tank crews reported the vehicle could maintain 20 to 25 kilometers per hour across rough ground faster than contemporary Soviet T-26 or British Vickers light tanks. However, the vehicle suffered several mechanical limitations. The manual transmission required double clutching for smooth gear changes. The clutch proved particularly prone to failure after approximately 1,000 kilometers of operation. Replacement clutch assemblies required specialized tools and training. The air-cooled engine's exposed fins accumulated dirt and vegetation in jungle operations, requiring daily maintenance to prevent overheating. The tracks used simple pin connectors that could shear under lateral stress, particularly during sharp turns on hard surfaces. The Type 95 Hago entered combat during the Second Sino-Japanese War. Commencing in July 1937, the Imperial Japanese Army deployed approximately 200 tanks to China. By December 1937, including newly produced Type 95 vehicles alongside older Type 89 mediums. These units operated as independent tank companies attached to infantry divisions rather than concentrated armored formations. The first independent tank company, equipped with 12 Type 95 tanks, participated in operations around Shanghai during August-November 1937. Combat reports indicate the vehicles proved effective against Chinese defensive positions constructed of sandbags, earth berms, and wooden structures. The 37mm gun successfully engaged Chinese pillboxes at ranges of 300 to 500 meters. High explosive shells proved particularly effective against masonry buildings. Chinese anti-tank capabilities consisted primarily of imported German 37mm PaK 35-36 guns, which had been delivered in limited quantities before the outbreak of war. These weapons could penetrate the Type 95's armor at ranges beyond 500 meters. However, Chinese forces lacked trained crews and integrated anti-tank doctrine. Japanese armor losses to direct fire weapons remained minimal. Most vehicle losses resulted from mechanical breakdown, fuel exhaustion, or immobilization in soft ground. The Battle of Tairzhuang in March-April 1938 represented the largest tank engagement of the China campaign. Japanese forces committed approximately 60 tanks, including Type 95 vehicles of the 1st and 3rd Tank Regiments. Chinese General Li Zongren's forces prepared anti-tank obstacles and concentrated German-supplied artillery. Japanese tanks operating without adequate infantry support suffered heavy losses. War diaries indicate 23 tanks destroyed or abandoned during the month-long battle. Post-battle analysis by the Imperial Japanese Army General Staff identified several lessons. First, Tank operations required close coordination with infantry to suppress anti-tank weapons. Second, nighttime attacks reduced vulnerability to direct fire, but complicated navigation and target identification. Third, concentration of armor at decisive points proved more effective than dispersal across wide frontages. These lessons would inform Japanese tank doctrine through 1945, though limitations in production capacity prevented implementation of concentrated armored formations. The Type 95 demonstrated superior mobility compared to Chinese forces' transportation capabilities. Japanese tanks regularly advanced 40 to 60 kilometers per day during pursuit operations, while Chinese infantry units could manage only 20 to 30 kilometers of foot march. This mobility advantage allowed Japanese forces to envelope Chinese positions repeatedly, compelling withdrawals that prevented the consolidation of defensive lines. However, Chinese forces developed effective improvised countermeasures. Molotov cocktails proved particularly effective against the Type 95's exposed engine deck. Chinese defenders in urban environments dropped gasoline-filled bottles from upper floors onto passing tanks, igniting engine fires that forced crews to abandon vehicles. Japanese forces responded by adding infantry escort teams with specific responsibility for suppressing upper floor positions during urban advances. The Type 95's operational range limitations became apparent during extended campaigns in China's interior. Supply convoys could not maintain pace with advancing tank units across China's poor road network. Commanders frequently faced choices between continuing advances with reduced fuel reserves or halting operations to establish supply dumps. War diaries from the 4th Tank Regiment indicate fuel shortages caused more mission delays than enemy action during the 1938 Wuhan campaign. The battles of Khalkhingal, occurring from May to September 1939 along the Mongolian-Manchurian border, provided the first test of Japanese armor against a peer opponent equipped with modern weapons. The engagement began as a border dispute over the demarcation between Manchukuo and Mongolia. By July, the conflict escalated to involve approximately 75,000 Japanese troops of the Kwantung Army facing 90,000 Soviet and Mongolian forces under General Georgy Zhukov. The Japanese 3rd and 4th Tank Regiments deployed to the Khalkhingal area with a total strength of approximately 73 tanks, primarily Type 95 Hago vehicles with some Type 97 Chiha medium tanks. Soviet forces fielded over 500 armored vehicles, including BT-5 and BT-7 fast tanks armed with 45mm guns, plus T-26 light tanks also carrying 45mm weapons. The initial engagement occurred on July 2, 1939, when Japanese tanks of the 3rd Tank Regiment encountered Soviet BT-5 vehicles near the Baintsigan Hill. The technical disparity became immediately apparent. Soviet 45mm armor-piercing rounds, fired at ranges of 800 to 1,000 meters, penetrated Type 95 armor with minimal deflection. Japanese 37mm projectiles proved unable to penetrate BT-5 frontal armor beyond 300 meters, requiring Japanese crews to maneuver for flank shots while under effective enemy fire. Lieutenant Colonel Yoshimaru Yamagata, commanding the 3rd Tank Regiment, reported that Type 95 crews observed Soviet shells passing completely through their vehicles, entering the front hull and exiting through the rear plate. This phenomenon caused severe casualties as projectiles traversed the entire crew compartment. Yamagata recommended immediate armor upgrades in his after-action report, though these recommendations would not be implemented during the war. The climactic engagement occurred on August 20, 1939, when General Zhukov launched a large-scale offensive. Soviet armored formations, organized into brigade-strength units, conducted coordinated attacks supported by artillery preparation and airstrikes. Japanese tanks, dispersed among infantry units, could not mass sufficient firepower to counter Soviet armor concentrations. Over 4 days of intense combat, The 3rd and 4th Tank Regiments suffered approximately 50 vehicle losses, nearly 70% of their operational strength. Soviet 45mm anti-tank guns proved particularly devastating. These towed weapons, positioned in concealed emplacements, engaged Japanese armor at ranges where the Type 95's 37mm gun could not effectively return fire. Soviet doctrine emphasized creating anti-tank strongpoints with mutually supporting fields of fire, preventing Japanese crews from maneuvering for favorable engagement angles. Captured Japanese documents examined after the battle revealed crew reactions to the armor penetrations. Multiple reports described crew members' shock at seeing daylight through holes punched in armor plate. One tank commander reported observing his vehicle's interior ventilated by 3 separate penetrations during a single engagement. Psychological impact of these penetrations degraded crew performance significantly. Crews abandoned vehicles that remained mechanically functional after experiencing non-catastrophic penetrations. The Imperial Japanese Army General Staff conducted extensive analysis of the Khalkhin-Gol defeats. A classified report dated November 1939 acknowledged the Type 95's armor inadequacy against 45mm weapons. However, the report concluded that major armor upgrades would reduce the vehicle's mobility advantages and exceed Japan's industrial capacity for thick armor plate production. The General Staff decided to proceed with existing designs while emphasizing improved tactics, night attacks, exploitation of terrain for concealment, and coordination with anti-tank gun units. This decision to accept known vulnerabilities rather than redesign armor protection would have profound consequences. When Japan entered the Pacific War in December 1941, the Type 95 remained essentially unchanged from its 1936 configuration. The lessons of Khalkhin-Gol were interpreted as tactical failures rather than fundamental design flaws, a perspective that would persist until the disaster on Saipan. December 8, 1941, Japanese forces launched simultaneous invasions across Southeast Asia and the Pacific. The Imperial Japanese Army committed approximately 200 tanks to these operations, with Type 95 Hago vehicles comprising the majority of light tank strength. The 1st Tank Group, attached to the 25th Army for the Malayan Campaign, included over 60 Type 95 tanks. The Malayan Campaign demonstrated the Type 95's capabilities in jungle warfare. Japanese forces advanced down the Malayan Peninsula, encountering British Commonwealth defenders who lacked integrated anti-tank defenses. British commanders had concluded that thick jungle rendered tanks impractical, an assessment Japanese planners specifically exploited. Type 95 tanks operated along roads and rubber plantations, providing mobile firepower that disrupted defensive positions. The Battle of Slim River on January 7, 1942, represented the Type 95's most successful engagement. Approximately 20 Japanese tanks of the 1st Tank Regiment penetrated British defensive lines before dawn, advancing 30 kilometers before encountering organized resistance. The tanks destroyed or captured over 50 British vehicles, killed or captured approximately 3,000 Commonwealth troops, and facilitated the collapse of an entire defensive sector. This action demonstrated the Type 95's shock effect against unprepared infantry formations. In the Philippines, Japanese armor operations faced different circumstances. The 4th Tank Regiment, with approximately 90 vehicles including Type 95 tanks, landed on Luzon in December 1941. American and Filipino forces possessed limited anti-tank capabilities, primarily 37mm M3 anti-tank guns in small numbers. The flat terrain of central Luzon suited mobile operations, and Japanese tanks exploited gaps in defensive lines to conduct deep penetrations. The first engagement between Japanese and American tanks occurred on December 22, 1941, near De Mortis. Elements of the 4th Tank Regiment encountered American M3 Stuart light tanks of the 192nd Tank Battalion. The The technical comparison appeared relatively balanced. The M3 Stuart mounted a 37mm M6 gun with slightly superior penetration compared to the Type 94. While possessing 44mm maximum armor thickness, the engagement results proved inconclusive. Both sides claimed several enemy vehicles destroyed, though verified losses totaled approximately 3 Japanese tanks and 2 American tanks. Japanese crews reported difficulty penetrating Stuart frontal armor beyond 400 meters. American crews similarly reported ineffective results from frontal engagements. Both sides emphasized flanking maneuvers to achieve penetrations. This engagement reinforced Japanese confidence in their armor capabilities. The Type 95 had demonstrated tactical parity with contemporary American light tanks. Japanese after-action reports emphasized crew skill and aggressive tactics as decisive factors. The armor vulnerability questions raised at Khalkhin Gol appeared less relevant against Western opponents who fielded similarly armed light tanks. Japanese tank operations throughout early 1942 continued this pattern of success. In the Dutch East Indies, Type 95 tanks supported the capture of oil facilities with minimal opposition. In Burma, Japanese armor advanced against British forces that possessed few anti-tank weapons. By mid-1942, Japanese tank crews had compiled an impressive combat record contributing to institutional confidence that would prove catastrophic when circumstances changed. The strategic context of the Saipan invasion reflected fundamental shifts in Pacific War dynamics. By June 1944, American forces had advanced across the Central Pacific, capturing the Gilbert and Marshall Islands. Saipan, located in the Mariana Islands approximately 1,900 kilometers south of Tokyo, represented the next objective in the advance toward Japan. Capture of the Marianas would position B-29 Superfortress bombers within range of the Japanese home islands. The Japanese garrison on Saipan totaled approximately 31,000 troops, including the 43rd Infantry Division, elements of the 31st Army, and naval construction units. Lieutenant General Yoshitsugu Seto commanded overall defense operations. The garrison possessed extensive fortifications constructed throughout 1943–1944, including concrete bunkers, artillery casemates, and prepared defensive positions across the island's mountainous terrain. The 9th Tank Regiment, commanded by Colonel Takashi Goto, constituted the primary mobile reserve. The unit deployed 44 operational tanks. Exact composition estimates vary in historical sources, but most accounts indicate approximately 30 Type 95 Ago light tanks and 12 to 14 Type 97 Chiha medium tanks. These vehicles represented nearly the entire armored strength available for Saipan's defense. American invasion forces consisted of the 2nd and 4th Marine Divisions, with the 27th Infantry Division in reserve totaling over 70,000 assault troops. Supporting naval forces included 15 battleships, 11 escort carriers, and numerous cruisers and destroyers. Preliminary bombardment commenced on June 13, 1944, with naval gunfire and carrier aircraft strikes targeting coastal defenses and known fortifications. The amphibious assault began at 07:00 hours on June 15, 1944. Marines landed across beaches, designated red, green, blue, and yellow on Saipan's southwestern coast. Japanese defenders subjected landing forces to intense artillery and mortar fire, causing significant casualties during the initial assault waves. By nightfall, approximately 20,000 Marines had established beachheads, approximately 1,000 meters deep. Marine units brought substantial firepower ashore during D-Day operations. The 2nd and 4th Tank Battalions landed M4 Sherman medium tanks beginning in the afternoon of June 15th. These vehicles mounted 75mm M3 guns capable of defeating any Japanese armor at ranges exceeding 1,500 meters. Sherman armor thickness 51mm frontal hull at 56-degree slope, providing effective protection equivalent to approximately 90 mm vertical armor, rendered them essentially immune to Type 95 37 mm rounds at combat ranges. Marine infantry companies possessed M2 Browning, 50 caliber heavy machine guns issued at a rate of 4 weapons per company. These weapons, designed primarily for anti-aircraft defense and long-range suppressive fire, would prove unexpectedly significant in the coming engagement. The M2's armor-piercing ammunition, designated M2AP, consisted of a hardened steel core projectile weighing 43 grams. Muzzle velocity reached 890 meters per second. Ballistic testing conducted at Aberdeen Proving Ground demonstrated penetration of 23 mm homogeneous armor at 200 meters range, nearly double the Type 95's maximum armor thickness. Japanese commanders observed American preparations with growing concern. Intelligence reports indicated the presence of Sherman tanks in significant numbers. Colonel Goto received orders to prepare a counterattack to eliminate the American beachhead before reinforcements could consolidate defensive positions. The plan called for a nighttime assault, exploiting darkness to reduce American firepower advantages and create confusion in Marine defensive positions. The tactical situation on June 17, 1944, reflected 3 days of intense combat. Marine forces had expanded their beachhead to a depth of approximately 3,000 meters, though a salient near Karankanoa remained vulnerable to counterattack. Japanese commanders identified this position as the optimal target for armored assault. Colonel Goto issued orders for the 9th Tank Regiment to conduct a night attack, supported by infantry from the 136th Infantry Regiment. Preparation for the assault began at dusk on June 16th. Tank crews conducted final mechanical inspections and ammunition loading. Each Type 95 carried approximately 100 rounds of 37 mm ammunition and 3,000 rounds of 7.7 mm machine gun ammunition. Type 97 Chiha medium tanks, armed with 57 mm guns, carried approximately 80 main gun rounds. Infantry assault companies assembled near staging areas south of the planned attack route. The movement to contact commenced at approximately 0200 hours on June 17th. Japanese tanks advanced in column formation along the coastal road toward Marine positions. Tank commanders navigated using compass bearings and terrain features. Radios in Japanese tanks lacked the range for reliable long-distance communication, and radio discipline required emission silence until contact. Engine noise from 44 diesel engines proved impossible to conceal despite movement discipline. Marine defensive positions consisted of hasty entrenchments and fighting holes arranged in company sectors. The 6th Marines held the sector directly in the path of the Japanese advance. Forward observers reported engine sounds at approximately 0245 hours. Company commanders ordered troops to stand to and activated fire support coordination. M4 Sherman tanks of the 2nd Tank Battalion, positioned in hull-down positions approximately 500 meters behind the front lines, started engines and prepared for engagement. Japanese tanks reached Marine forward positions at approximately 0330 hours. Type 95 crews identified American fighting holes and commenced firing high-explosive shells and machine gun fire. Marine infantry returned fire with individual weapons, largely ineffective against armor. However, Marine heavy weapons teams immediately engaged with M2 Browning, 50 caliber machine guns. The M2's effectiveness against the Type 95 surprised both sides. Gunners observed tracer rounds loaded at a ratio of 1 tracer to 4 armor-piercing rounds, penetrating Japanese tank hulls. The armor-piercing rounds punched through 12 mm armor with minimal deflection, entering crew compartments and exiting through opposite side plates. The phenomenon of complete penetration created multiple entry and exit holes, ventilating tank interiors. Psychological impact on Japanese crews proved severe. Tank commanders observed rounds penetrating their vehicle's armor, a situation their training had not addressed. Standard doctrine assumed machine gun fire would be ineffective against armor, allowing tanks to suppress infantry positions with relative impunity. The reality of armor penetration by infantry weapons fundamentally violated these assumptions. Type 95 crews attempted to continue the assault despite taking penetrating hits. However, multiple penetrations degraded crew performance rapidly. Wounds from shell fragments and spalling caused casualties among crewmen. Several tanks suffered engine damage as .50 caliber rounds penetrated engine deck armor, allowing rounds to strike cylinder heads and fuel lines. Disabled tanks blocked the coastal road, disrupting the advance of following vehicles. At approximately 0400 hours, Marine Sherman tanks engaged from positions approximately 800 meters from the advancing Japanese column. The 75mm M3 gun proved overwhelmingly superior to Japanese armor protection. High explosive shells striking Type 95 hulls caused catastrophic kills, ammunition detonations, fuel fires, and complete structural failure. Sherman crews reported engagements lasting seconds, with Japanese tanks destroyed by single shots. Japanese infantry accompanying the tank assault encountered concentrated machine gun and rifle fire from Marine positions. Without effective tank support, infantry charges suffered severe casualties. Some infantry units reached Marine fighting holes, resulting in close-quarters combat resolved by grenades, bayonets, and point-blank small arms fire. Marine units reported hand-to-hand fighting in several sectors, though numerical superiority and supporting fires prevented Japanese penetrations. The engagement continued through dawn on June 17th. By 0600 hours, sunlight revealed the battlefield situation. 31 Japanese tanks lay destroyed or disabled between the jump-off point and Marine lines. 9 tanks had burned completely, leaving only chassis remains. 22 showed multiple penetration holes, many exhibiting the characteristic entry and exit wounds created by .50 caliber armor-piercing rounds. The 9th Tank Regiment effectively ceased to exist as a combat formation. Surviving crews estimates suggest 30 to 40 personnel escaped from disabled vehicles, withdrew to Japanese lines. Colonel Goto died during the engagement, though specific circumstances of his death remain unclear in historical records. Japanese infantry losses totaled approximately 400 to 500 casualties, including dead, wounded, and missing personnel. Marine casualties from the engagement totaled approximately 100 personnel, primarily from the initial tank, gunfire, and subsequent infantry assaults. No Sherman tanks were lost to Japanese fire during the engagement. Marine after-action reports emphasized the effectiveness of .50 caliber machine guns against Japanese light armor, recommending increased allocation of armor-piercing ammunition for future operations. The Saipan engagement highlighted technical disparities between Japanese and American armor that reflected broader industrial and design philosophy differences. A systematic comparison of the Type 95 Hago and M4 Sherman reveals multiple capability gaps. The Type 95 weighed 7.4 metric tons, measured 4.3 meters in length, and possessed a power-to-weight ratio of approximately 16 horsepower per ton. The M4 Sherman weighed 30.3 metric tons, measured 5.9 meters in hull length, and achieved a power-to-weight ratio of approximately 13 horsepower per ton. Despite lower power-to-weight ratio, the Sherman's superior suspension and track design provided comparable cross-country mobility. Armor protection represented the most significant disparity. Type 95 maximum armor thickness of 12 millimeters provided protection only against rifle-caliber weapons. The Sherman's frontal hull armor measured 51 millimeters at 56-degree slope, equivalent to approximately 90 millimeters vertical armor due to angle effects. Turret frontal armor measured 76 millimeters on early models, increased to 89 millimeters on later variants. This protection defeated most German 50mm and 75mm anti-tank weapons at combat ranges. Armament capabilities showed similar gaps. The Type 94 37mm gun could penetrate 45mm armor at 100 meters with armor-piercing shot. The Sherman S75mm M3 gun penetrated 68mm armor at 1,000 meters with M61 armor-piercing ammunition, sufficient to defeat any Japanese armor from ranges beyond effective Japanese return fire. The Sherman also mounted two 30 caliber machine guns and one 50 caliber machine gun, providing superior suppressive fire capability. Crew ergonomics and combat effectiveness reflected these technical differences. The Type 95's three-man crew operated in severely cramped conditions. The commander's requirement to perform loading, aiming, firing, and command functions simultaneously degraded combat effectiveness significantly. Combat reports indicate Type 95 units achieved fire rates of 3 to 5 aimed rounds per minute. The Sherman's 5-man crew included a dedicated loader, enabling fire rates of 8 to 10 aimed rounds per minute. The commander possessed a cupola with periscopic vision devices, allowing 360-degree observation without exposure. The gunner operated sophisticated optical sights with magnification and ranging capabilities, far superior to Japanese equipment. Radio equipment was standard in all American tanks, facilitating coordination impossible in Japanese formations, where only command vehicles possessed radios. Industrial production capabilities underscored these technical disparities. Japan manufactured approximately 2,300 Type 95 tanks from 1936 to 1943. United States industry produced 49,234 M4 Sherman variants from 1942 to 1945. At peak production in 1943, American factories delivered over 1,000 Shermans monthly, exceeding total Japanese tank production for the entire war. The manufacturing process differences were equally significant. Sherman production utilized extensive automation, standardized components, and assembly line techniques pioneered by automotive industry. Fisher Body Company, as Grand Blanc Tank Arsenal in Michigan, could produce a complete Sherman in approximately 10 working days by 1943. Japanese tank production relied heavily on hand-fitting components, limited automation, and small batch manufacturing that consumed far more man-hours per vehicle. Material quality represented another critical factor. American armor plate used molybdenum and nickel alloying for improved hardness and resistance to cracking. Japanese industry, facing shortages of alloying elements due to blockade effects, produced armor of increasingly poor quality throughout the war. Metallurgical analysis of late war. Japanese armor shows brittleness and inconsistent hardness that reduced effective protection below theoretical values. The Type 95's failures on Saipan reflected broader constraints on Japanese industrial capacity. Japan's economy, while substantial by Asian standards, could not match American production across any category of war materiel. Tank production illustrated these limitations clearly. Japanese steel production peaked at approximately 7 million metric tons in 1943, barely 10% of American steel output that same year. This fundamental resource constraint limited armor plate availability. Japanese planners faced constant choices between allocating steel to warships, aircraft, artillery, or tanks. Tank production consistently received lower priority than naval construction and aircraft manufacturing. The primary Japanese tank manufacturers included Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, which produced approximately 1,400 Type 95 vehicles; Niigata Engineering Company, which manufactured approximately 600 units; and several smaller contractors. These facilities lacked the scale of American tank arsenals. The Detroit Tank Arsenal, a single facility, exceeded the combined output of all Japanese tank manufacturers. Japanese industry also lacked access to critical machine tools and manufacturing equipment. American and British export restrictions from the 1930s had limited Japan's acquisition of advanced metalworking machinery. Japanese attempts to develop indigenous machine tool industries achieved limited success. Most high-precision equipment came from captured stocks in occupied territories or from neutral suppliers at inflated prices. Labor constraints compounded these difficulties. Japanese industry relied heavily on skilled craftsmen for tank production, particularly for turret manufacturing and armor welding. These skilled workers could not be rapidly replaced as casualties occurred or as workers were diverted to military service. American industry, by contrast, successfully employed semi-skilled workers, including large numbers of women, in tank production, using simplified manufacturing processes that reduced skill requirements. The Type 97 Chiha medium tank, intended as the Type 95 successor, entered production in 1938. This vehicle mounted a 57mm gun and possessed slightly improved armor maximum thickness of 33mm. However, production totaled only approximately 1,200 units through 1,943. Even this improved vehicle proved inadequate against Sherman armor, while its increased weight reduced the mobility advantages that had characterized Japanese light tanks. Japan did attempt to develop heavier tanks in response to combat experience. The Type 3 Chinu medium tank, mounting a 75mm gun derived from anti-aircraft weapons, entered limited production in 1944. Approximately 60 units were manufactured before war's end. These vehicles never deployed overseas, being retained for homeland defense. The Type 4 Chi-2, mounting a high-velocity 75mm gun and possessing 75mm frontal armor, reached only prototype stage 2 or 3 vehicles completed before Japan's surrender. These development programs consumed resources without producing combat-effective results in sufficient numbers. Japanese tank design by 1944 had reached theoretical parity with 1942 vintage Allied medium tanks, but production capacity prevented fielding these vehicles in meaningful numbers. Meanwhile, Allied tank development continued advancing. The M26 Pershing heavy tank, mounting a 90mm gun, began production in late 1944, widening the technical gap further. Strategic bombing compounded Japanese production problems. B-29 raids beginning in late 1944 struck industrial facilities, including tank manufacturing plants. The March 1945 firebombing of Tokyo destroyed numerous subcontractor facilities producing tank components. By spring 1945, Japanese tank production had essentially ceased. Remaining vehicles were drawn from existing inventory or assembled from stockpiled components. The lessons of Saipan forced Japanese commanders to reconsider tank employment doctrine. Subsequent operations reflected this tactical evolution, though fundamental equipment limitations remained unchanged. Japanese armor in the final year of the Pacific War operated under doctrinal assumptions, emphasizing static defense rather than mobile counterattack. The Battle of Iwo Jima, February-March 1945, exemplified this shift. Lieutenant Colonel Baron Takechi Nishi commanded the 26th Tank Regiment, equipped with approximately 28 tanks including Type 95 vehicles. Rather than conducting mobile operations, Nishi received orders to deploy tanks as stationary firing positions integrated into Iwo Jima's extensive fortification network. Japanese engineers buried tanks in prepared positions, leaving only turrets exposed. Tanks were positioned to cover beach approaches and interior defensive positions with interlocking fields of fire. This employment method reduced tanks' vulnerability to naval gunfire and aircraft attack while preserving their weapons as pillboxes. However, it also negated mobility advantages and made tanks vulnerable to systematic reduction by Marine infantry equipped with demolitions and flamethrowers. The 26th Tank Regiment's vehicles were progressively destroyed during the month-long battle. Marine combat engineers used satchel charges to destroy buried tanks, lowering explosive charges down turret hatches or placing them against hull sides. Flamethrower teams engaged vision ports and ventilation openings, forcing crews to abandon positions. By battle's end, no Japanese tanks remained operational on Iwo Jima. The Battle of Okinawa, April-June 1945, saw similar tactical approaches. The 27th Tank Regiment deployed approximately 27 tanks across the island, primarily positioned in static defensive roles. However, Japanese commanders also attempted one significant armor counterattack on May 4, 1945, reflecting persistent belief in counteroffensive operations. The May 4th counterattack involved 27 Japanese tanks advancing against American positions near Maeda Escarpment. American forces had deployed over 800 tanks on Okinawa, primarily M4 Shermans but also including M24 Chaffee-like tanks and M26 Pershing heavy tanks. The engagement lasted approximately 4 hours. American tanks, supported by artillery and airstrikes, destroyed all attacking Japanese armor. No American tanks were lost to Japanese tank fire. Post-battle examination of destroyed Japanese tanks on Okinawa revealed continuing armor quality degradation. Several vehicles showed armor plate cracking around penetration points, indicating brittle steel, unable to deform without fracturing. Metallurgical testing confirmed low-quality armor in late-war production, with some samples showing no alloying elements beyond basic carbon content. Japanese tank crews' tactical approaches showed adaptation to equipment limitations. Crews emphasized first-shot effectiveness, recognizing they would likely not survive to fire second rounds against Sherman tanks. Ambush positions were carefully selected to allow flank shots against thinner side armor. Some crews attempted to close to point-blank range where the Type 95's 37mm gun could achieve penetrations, a suicidal tactic that occasionally succeeded, but more often resulted in Japanese tank destruction before reaching effective range. The final months of the Pacific War saw virtually no Japanese armor operations. Remaining tanks were concentrated in Japan, proper for anticipated homeland defense operations. Approximately 600 tanks of various types were available in July 1945, dispersed among defensive positions near potential invasion beaches. Plans called for these vehicles to operate from concealed positions, engaging landing forces during the critical vulnerability of amphibious assault. Japan's surrender in August 1945 prevented this final employment of Japanese armor. The Type 95 Hago's combat record reflects broader themes in World War II military history: the decisive importance of industrial capacity, the accelerating pace of technological development, and the consequences of institutional inflexibility. From 1937 through 1942, the vehicle served adequately in its designed role, providing mobile fire support against opponents lacking dedicated anti-tank capabilities. The transition from colonial warfare to peer conflict exposed design flaws that Japanese industry proved unable to remedy. Several counterfactual questions merit examination. Could Japan have developed effective tank designs given different strategic choices? Hypothetically, concentrating resources on fewer, heavier tank types might have produced more combat-effective vehicles. However, such an approach would have conflicted with Japanese strategic requirements for lightweight, transportable equipment suitable for Pacific Island warfare and Chinese operations across poor infrastructure. The Sherman's technical superiority reflected American design philosophy, emphasizing crew survivability, mechanical reliability, and production efficiency. Sherman crews fought from vehicles with superior protection, firepower, and situational awareness. When disabled, crews could often escape and return to combat in replacement vehicles. Japanese tank crews, operating vehicles with minimal protection, suffered catastrophic losses from which recovery was impossible. Statistical analysis of tank engagements throughout the Pacific War reveals the disparities clearly. American tank versus tank engagements achieved kill ratios exceeding 10-1 in favor of Sherman tanks against Japanese armor. Infantry anti-tank weapons, including bazookas and recoilless rifles, introduced in 1943-1944, achieved similar effectiveness. Japanese tanks increasingly fell victim to infantry portable weapons, not just dedicated anti-tank guns or enemy armor. The human cost of these technical inadequacies deserves acknowledgement. Japanese tank crews fought with equipment they recognized as inferior, accepting near-certain death when engaging American armor. Personal accounts from surviving Japanese tankers, scarce but revealing, describe feelings of helplessness when facing Sherman tanks. One Type 95 commander who survived Saipan later recalled watching his rounds bounce off Sherman armor while knowing the next enemy shot would kill his entire crew. American tactical innovation also contributed to Japanese armor's ineffectiveness. Marine Corps' doctrine emphasized combined arms coordination, with infantry, armor, artillery, and air support operating as integrated systems. This approach magnified American technical advantages. Japanese tanks faced not only superior enemy armor, but also coordinated fire from multiple weapon systems simultaneously. The Type 95's ultimate failure on Saipan represented no deficiency in crew courage or tactical skill. Japanese tankers executed their orders with determination against overwhelming odds. The failure reflected strategic decisions made years earlier. Decisions to prioritize other military programs over tank development, to accept armor vulnerability in exchange for weight reduction, and to continue production of obsolescent designs rather than disrupt manufacturing for unproven improvements. Modern armor design incorporates lessons from engagements like Saipan. The principle that armor must provide protection against probable threats, not merely rifle-caliber weapons, has become fundamental. The requirement for crew ergonomics supporting sustained combat effectiveness is now universally recognized. The Type 95's cramped three-man crew arrangement has no equivalent in contemporary armored vehicles, where crews of 4 or 5 operate in relative comfort with specialized roles. The Type 95 Hazo remains today as museum displays and battlefield relics across the Pacific. Several restored examples exist in military collections in Japan, the United States, and other nations. These physical remnants serve as tangible connections to historical events that shaped the modern world. The small, boxy vehicles appear almost toy-like compared to modern main battle tanks, yet they represent the aspirations, limitations, and ultimate tragedy of Japan's World War II military effort.